Fireworks coming in 8 days. We're back, another edition of Kevin's Corner. Dane Brugler from The Athletic. We're going to throw that one in there right before Twitter questions on today's pod. Dane is outstanding. I love his temperament, honestly. I feel like in a chaotic nature that comes with covering the draft, I just think Dane is really even keel and just does great work. And so looking forward to you guys hearing that. And today will be our annual positional mock draft. So 9 picks. Is that right, Eddie? 3 in round 5, 2 in round 7, none in round 6. That adds up to 9. That's what the Colts have heading into next week. So we'll do this strictly based off needs, kind of throwing a caveat there right out of the gate. And before we get to the positional mock draft, I do want to go over a couple of takeaways that I had from earlier today. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, April 19th, from being at the Colts facility. But before we get to all of that, Eddie Garrison, good Wednesday afternoon to you.
Good Wednesday afternoon to you as well. Reds lose 8-0.
Oh, my gosh, man. So is this now 5 straight games that the differential's been 7 or more?
Let me look. That's a good...
I think is approaching MLB history.
Oh, goodness.
Now, they have won, to be fair, a couple of those games. But they have not played close baseball games here as of late.
No, we got positional pitcher again on the mound today.
I couldn't believe the Hunter Green stat in signing his extension yesterday that he is the first Red player that is now under contract through 2024. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine saying that about an NFL team. And I get, obviously, contracts are different.
Yeah.
Roster construction is different. But to think that they don't have a single player signed beyond this season until Hunter Green. Mm-hmm. And there's team options and there
arbitrations, yeah.
Yeah, the MLB is weird, but when I saw that, I was like, holy shnikes.
Yes, 6.
6 straight now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah.
Blowout after blowout after blowout. They have won a couple, but still, not a lot of late inning drama.
All right, that's enough baseball talk, yeah.
Lately, yeah, that is enough baseball talk. All right, let's go up to the Colts complex from earlier today. Coordinators and Shaquille Leonard, Jonathan Taylor, and Ryan Kelly. My biggest takeaway from Shaq, and I don't know if I'm honestly that surprised by this, Eddie, but I think you're just always curious, okay, where is he at rehab-wise? I think we're going to monitor this right up until the first day of training camp and potentially into training camp. Like, I don't think this is a slam dunk Shaquille Leonard is 110% for day one. At least we can't say that in mid-April. And again, I don't know if that is like breaking news, but that's just the vibe that I get in listening to Leonard. He certainly feels better. He was, very candid about the mental struggles of last season and, will I ever get back to 5'3", and will I ever be back to the maniac? When I heard those questions, I did ask him, does retirement ever creep into your mind, or did it? And he was very emphatic. No, he referenced, back, I guess, in his 3rd season, he had a concussion, and somebody asked him about retirement, and he felt like it got blown out of proportion. I vaguely remember that. I don't really remember it, to be totally honest with you. But right now, he's not doing too much running. First day of OTAs last year is where he felt that issue. We're about a month away from OTAs. So, again, my question is, day one of camp, will he be cleared to go? There is a player on defense to watch for that I was a big fan of the Colts re-signing him that we'll get to in a few minutes that I think kind of plays off of the Leonard situation. On the Ryan Kelly front, it's crazy, Eddie, to think he's the longest tenured Colt. He'll be 30 at the end of next month. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He said he heard the trade rumors, didn't necessarily hear them from people that matter, a.k.a. the higher-ups within the Colts building or his agent. So he never got too worried about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, but if and when the Colts draft a young quarterback and if and when that QB gets into games and potentially starts from day one, that'll be the youngest QB Kelly has ever been with by far.
Oh, certainly.
I mean, when you think about his career, Luck early on, Brissett, I guess, and him are probably similar in age.
I would suppose you can throw in Ellinger.
Yeah, I guess I mean like full-time starter from week one. Obviously, Phillip Rivers, Wentz and him are similar in age, Matt Ryan. This will easily be the youngest gap, or the biggest gap, I should say, if and when that happens. I thought Kelly, in typical Kelly fashion, With the chaos from last year, he said he wanted to distance himself as much as possible from football. And I think that's a vibe you get from a lot of these guys. And that's how January and February were spent, maybe even a bit of March. I do think naturally you just have a refreshed mindset now and a clean slate for the offensive guys, especially coming back into the building. Eddie, I look at Ryan Kelly, and I think he falls into the Chris Ballard phrase at the end of the year. And again, this does not mean that Ballard's slate is clean either. He's at fault as well. But I thought at the same time, Ballard accurately stated, our best guys need to play like they are our best guys. Mm-hmm. And I would put Kelly into the camp of a guy that did not play at that level. He chalks it a little bit up more to miscommunication across the unit. I guess when you're the center, I think that's a big responsibility that you have. And just the continuity with Braden Smith and Nelson, it's not like they had gobs and gobs of injuries early in the season. We'll see if Tony Sprono Jr. can provide a bit of a spark there. We'll see about zone blocking. That's been the primary scheme they've used in years past. Jim Bob Cooter said today that'll be kind of dependent on the personnel. And again, as of April 19th, the personnel is the exact same on that O-line. Jonathan Taylor, typical Taylor fashion, a bit awkward when talking about injuries and contract. Called the surgery a perfect success. He's not doing everything right now, so not doing his normal spring stuff, coming back from that ankle injury. Late summer for that extension, how it looks, the years, the guarantees. Anytime it's a running back, I think you're very much in tune with that or curious what that all will look like. And then lastly, I thought Gus Bradley had a couple interesting points. First off, Gus really likes the cornerback class. I don't think that's shocking to hear. This cornerback group sounds to be pretty good this season. We'll get more into that in the positional mock draft. Eddie, the sleeper, and, to be totally fair, I don't think I would have labeled him as a sleeper before listening to Gus Bradley today. I've always been a fan of his. I've always really liked his career arc. I think it's a great story. But I just feel like he has played a position that the Colts are typically good and deep at, and you just don't necessarily need him or necessarily have a clear path for him on the field. EJ Speed is someone Gus Bradley really, really likes. And he mentioned today that he's just got traits that they want to have on the field. And I think when you look at Speed, obviously Leonard impact is going to be huge there. And how he fits or exactly what is maybe needed out of him. But it just seems like the Colts want to play him. It felt like they should have played him more last season. Again, I don't know exactly how that looks. Does that mean more base defense? Do you take Zaire Franklin off the field a little bit more? Obviously, Leonard health will be a huge factor in this. And again, we'll get into linebacker in the positional mock draft. But I would label EJ Speed as a guy that the Colts want to see more from. And I'm not saying they want like him to develop more necessarily. Like that sounds like a knock on EJ Speed. I just think Bradley is curious about what he could do with some more snaps. So again, how that looks remains to be seen, but I'm going to be watching EJ Speed this season. Lastly, Nick Cross, Eddie. Every time I hear Nick Cross's name, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, he is on the team. I just feel like he's kind of like a forgotten guy at times. The big thing for him was they felt like he was thinking too much, and that impacted him playing to the rare athletic traits that he has. Remember, he started last season. He started week 2. He got benched about halfway through that week 2. What was week 2? Was that Jacksonville? Yeah. Jacksonville. He got benched about halfway through, and after that, man, he played 6 snaps the rest of the season. I think he was a healthy scratch for a game late in the year. If I'm not mistaken.
I think so too. I think it was the second to last game.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds about right. And again, they knew that they would have to be patient with him. If I'm not mistaken, he was one of, if not the youngest guy in the draft last year. So you knew you're going to have to be patient. But with Rodney McLeod now gone, and Gus did say they felt like Cross kind of made some progress and feeling a little bit more comfortable, not thinking as much as the season moved along. That still didn't mean that he played any. But, how they divvy up the safety snaps between Cross, Rodney Thomas, and Julian Blackmon in a contract year will be something to keep an eye on. And Rodney McLeod, as of now, is a free agent here as we are a month into the offseason. So I think that covers everything on my end. Eddie, from up there, anything of note? I know you might have been monitoring a little bit on Twitter, or should we get into the positional mock?
I think we should get into the positional mock. I think you hit on pretty much everything. I was going to say with EJ Speed, though, it feels like anytime he's been given the opportunity to be a linebacker on like a full-time reps, he has stepped in and played really well.
I'm glad you brought that up. You know, the Arizona Christmas game with everybody and their mother having COVID, that probably stands out the most. I'll also say this, Eddie, you know, he played the most special team snaps of anybody on the team last year. And they've had a lot of turnover within that unit. Obviously, Bubba Ventrone is gone. So Speed is he's a unique guy. I mean, think about that play he made against Davis Mills in week 1. If he doesn't have that strip sack, the Colts probably lose that game in Houston. I mean, the tie itself was bad enough, but that was a Leonard-type play from Speed, and he has those athletic traits. You just want to see a little bit more out of him. So before we get to Dane Brugler, let's do the positional mock, and just a reminder for everybody out there, it's an annual thing that we do, and this is making the draft strictly off of depth chart needs. So what are the biggest needs? And obviously you assign value based off where the draft pick falls for the Colts. I think that is pretty much all the explanation that is needed. With that, Eddie, let's get it started.
Round 1, pick 4.
Pretty obvious to me. It is quarterback.
I thought you were going to say kicker. Darn it.
Competition for Matt Gay. No, again, you guys have heard me say it year in and year out here as of late, but especially this season, short term, long term. You need it. You need to build with that rookie contract for all those reasons. You know, I think it's worth mentioning, Eddie. In all likelihood, obviously the Colts are going to draft a quarterback here very early, probably in round 1. If I'm not mistaken, they're the last team in the AFC to have drafted a quarterback in one of the first 3 rounds. If you look on past drafts, you got to go back to the luck draft for taking a guy in the first 3 rounds. I think every AFC team has taken one in the first 3 rounds since then, and it's close to every NFL team. I would need to double check that. But it's been a while. There's a little bit of understanding from 2013, 14, 15, 16 why you didn't. Again, I could make the argument that, you know, not to get off on a tangent, but like the Jalen Hurts thing, well, I'm going to hold off on the Jalen Hurts thing till we get to Twitter questions.
Smart idea on your end. Round 2, pick 35.
And let me preface here, Eddie, by saying this. I think you can have 2 philosophies with this thought process and or draft. I think one thought process is you need to do everything possible to support the young quarterback. And I am probably of that thinking. For this exercise, we are still doing depth chart. But I think having the mindset that Bill Polian had in 98 or Ryan Grigson had in 2012 is something that should be explored heavily. I'm not saying Chris Ballard will necessarily do that, but I do think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess for those kind of just, I don't know, unfamiliar with, you know, how things developed for the Colts in 98, they followed up a generational quarterback in Peyton Manning with Jerome Pathon, a wideout, E.G. Green, a wideout in the 3rd round, and then Steve McKinney on the O-line in the 4th round. So they drafted generational QB, and then they went pass catcher, O-line. Andrew Luck in 2012, I think we all remember how that unfolded. Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, you trade back into round 3 for T.Y. Hilton. And then don't forget what you did in the final day. Vic Ballard at running back, Levon Brazil at receiver as well. So
Gosh, those names.
5 skill guys. That's a lot for one draft. And then...
nice recall by you.
Yeah, and you know what? I like Brazil, and I know one of the big plays he had some off the field stuff.
Have you ever been? Oh, sorry, you're talking about him.
No, I've not been. But that Detroit comeback game, the iconic Luck running it in at the buzzer, you know, that was Brazil kind of spearheading that with a huge touchdown to get things started.
Donnie Avery.
Donnie Avery was open on that play on that crosser. But, you know, when you think back, Eddie, I bring that up to say, I mean, those are 2, again, generational quarterback talents. And the GMs in both of those settings acted like they just drafted you or me at quarterback, and they needed to give them all the help in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I think you walk into this draft, and that's a philosophy that I think you should have. And, you know, I feel like the Colts have lacked support for their quarterback. here in recent years. That matters even more when you've got a fragile mind in a rookie QB. Those first years, it can get fragile real quick, and adversity can hit them real quick. So I want to support them as best as possible. Having said all of that, this practice is about the depth chart. And to me, there is nothing that comes close to cornerback when you look at this depth chart right now in terms of need. So I'm going to go corner here, just again, strictly off of the depth chart. I'll echo what Gus Bradley said a little bit earlier today. He likes the guys from a length standpoint, short area quickness standpoint in this draft. I think it would be wise to even explore maybe a future nickel for Kenny Moore in this draft. Next week's pod, we'll get into what my mock draft would look like for the Colts. And I still think corner has to be viewed as a premium position, Eddie. I mean, it can help your pass rush out big time. If you have good corner play, that obviously aids what you're doing up front. And look at the wideouts that you played last year. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin. I guess throw Devontae Smith into that same group. The wideouts that you're going to play this year from or just AFC wideouts. Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see where Odell Beckham is when
looks like.
Yeah, looks like. Jalen Waddle. Christian Kirk had a really nice season here in the division. So I still view it. Say it again.
John Mechie.
Be a hell of a story, certainly. So we'll see how that plays out. But to me, look at what you lost in Gilmore, even what you lost a little bit in Brandon Faison. Dallas Flowers, Isaiah Rodgers, Kenny Moore. That would be your 3 cornerback grouping if you're going to go play tomorrow. You need to draft a corner, and the good news is there's what sounds like a lot of good draft depth at that position.
Yeah, there is, and there's still some veteran free agent cornerbacks that are available too that they could tap into once the draft is over. Kind of hinted at it about what the Colts should do with going quarterback in the first round. You've got them doing it in round number 3 with the 79th pick that they got from Washington in the trade for Carson, a.k.a. Carl Wentz.
I'm going to go wide out here. And Eddie, I want to be specific on the skill set. I don't need another power forward in that room. There's enough power forwards in that room. I need a point guard. I need a jittery bug in that room. I need the guy that, when I think of the point guard that I'm thinking about the guy that comes off the bench that can't shoot it, but he's there to just play defense and hound you because he's got great lateral quickness and get up in your face, and he's just kind of that jitterbug full of energy. I think the Colts need that at wideout. And again, I think the good news is when you look at this wideout group, while it might not have a top 10 pick in the group, it seems to have some of the 5'9", 5'10", shifty sort of dudes. I know that goes against a lot of what Chris Ballard believes in at wideout, but I think you need to complement the power forwards with a point guard. So that would be the route that I would go. You guys heard me talk about it last month, when we talked a little bit more free agency on the pod. Isaiah McKenzie to Paris Campbell is not one person is out of the building, one person is in the building. That's the depth chart equivalent. McKenzie's gadgety. I need a little bit more of a stabling force in the slot. McKenzie's had inconsistencies. You can't ignore that either. So, again, there is a lot of these body types, I think, in this draft. So I'll go wide out here in round 3.
And if you buy into the Houston Texans swirls that have come about of them not going quarterback number 2, and who knows, maybe Arizona decides to stay after all at 3 and select defensive end or go somewhere else, and you see C.J. Stroud fall to you there at number 4, and the Colts like C.J. Stroud, or I should say if the Colts like C.J. Stroud, because we don't know if they do or not, then you're going to need somebody to get down the field to support that arm, because right now they don't have a player that can just burn the safety to get down the sideline and get a big play.
I mean, in a perfect dream world, Eddie, this would be T.Y. Hilton 2.0. 3rd round.
Charlie Jones.
2012, maybe not the exact skill set. I do like Charlie Jones a lot, but the pairing here of the young wideout with the young quarterback probably speaks for itself. So, yeah, that's where I'm going round 3.
All right, so just to recap, round 1, quarterback, round 2, cornerback, round 3, wide receiver. Now we're on to round 4, pick 106. What position do you have the Indianapolis Colts going?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the O-line here. I'm going to go to the interior specifically to the O-line. Again, as of now, 0 additions of note here to the offensive line. Ryan Kelly is going to turn 30 next month. He's got 2 years left on the deal. I don't think Will Fries should be written in Sharpie at all at guard. You still have Danny Pinter. Pinter has got to be into a contract year, right? He's been in the league for 3 years. I think he is. So, whether you want to talk about competing for right guard, whether you want to talk about competing for center, the future at center, I think interior of your offensive line should be here. And I think this franchise needs to start hitting, Eddie, on day 3 interior linemen. I think if you look around the NFL, you will find a lot of those starting types. And I just think how roster construction should be, that's where you need to try and go. So I'll go interior O-line here.
All right, the Colts have 3 picks in the 5th round. 1 from Dallas, 1 from Buffalo, and their own. Mm-hmm. We'll start with the Colts' 5th round pick because that falls first. That's pick 138.
Yeah, obviously Gilmore and Hines would be the trades and the other ones. I'm going to stick with the O-line and go out to tackle. Let's go there here, Eddie. And it's primarily depth, when you look at where things stand right now from a Braden Smith standpoint and a Bernard Ryman standpoint. I think you are giving Bernard Ryman every chance to start at left tackle. But you know what? Matt Pryor's no longer here. And go ahead and insert the laugh track. Dennis Kelly's no longer here. Like, the guys that were your depth pieces at tackle last year aren't here. Mm-hmm. So I think in a perfect, little scenario here, you would draft a Joe Haig. You would draft a Joe Wrights. I know Haig is a little bit more applicable of being a draft pick versus Wrights, but that's what I would be looking for here. I don't think tackle has been drafted enough by the Colts. That's where I'm going here with the first round of 5 selection.
And you said one of the other 2 5th-round picks they got via trade. This one is from Buffalo in the Nyheim Hines trade. Round 5, pick 162.
Let's double dip. Let's go back to corner. I'm going to go back to corner. To me, Eddie, it's a position that short-term and long-term, you have questions. I think you have pressing questions outside corner and long-term questions at inside corner. Again, Kenny Moore's going into contract year and is reaching the age of 30. So for those reasons, I think that is where you need a double dip at corner. Again, great draft depth as well. Can you have an Isaiah Rodgers type of day 3 sort of find here? I'm going to go corner.
And the final 5th-round pick, this is from Dallas via the Stephon Gilmore trade, is number 176. I almost said the position group there for a second.
Nothing on Chris Ballard's resume has he done better than drafting linebackers. Nothing. I mean, it's outstanding what he's done at the linebacker position, whether it's Leonard in round 2 or Bobby Okereke in 3 or E.J. Speed in 5, Zaire Franklin in 7. He's been brilliant when it comes to that position, so tap back into that and draft it here. And you know what? If things don't go great with Leonard, if he has another setback, all of a sudden this pick, Eddie, might be needed in some capacity early on. So there probably is some people out there that would say, hey, I'd push linebacker higher. I'm going to trust Ballard and, put Leonard's health to the side because I don't think anybody knows. It's just such a weird situation. I don't think you truly know. But I think a day 3, round 5 linebacker, I think you could get some potential early impact from him. So I'll round out round 5 here with linebacker before they take round 6 off.
I was going to mention here with the gaps, too, on special teams that are now voided. Mm-hmm. I think that's also a sneaky position to add A, depth like you talked about, and B, get a solid special teamer, whether that's on punt return or on kick return.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would need to double check, Eddie, but I feel like the Colts are outside of EJ Speed, maybe Tony Brown. I don't think they're bringing back really anybody from a major core special team standpoint.
Stewart
last year. I guess Stewart would be back, wouldn't he? God, I could be totally off on that now that you say that. Maybe they are bringing back like 5 of their top 6. For some reason, I felt like they were losing people from that. I'll try to look that up.
Okay.
But yeah, how many we got left?
Uno. So here are, just want to recap everything so people don't have to go back and listen. Round 1, pick 4, quarterback. Round 2, pick 35, corner. Round 3, pick 79, wide receiver. Round 4, offensive guard or center. Round 5, offensive tackle. Round 5, cornerback. Round 5, linebacker, which leads to the final pick the Colts have. And round number 7, it is the 221st player to be selected. And what group do you have him coming from?
And they got 2, right? In round 7, don't they have the Grant Stewart one?
You're right. I didn't scroll down past the ad there.
Yeah, they have 1 more.
So they have 2 left.
Yeah, and now I'm looking at the special team snaps. Yeah, they do bring back a lot. Maybe for some reason I was thinking defense. Don't bring back Ben Banagoo. I guess that would be one of your core special teamers that you're not bringing back. Okay, the first round 7-1. Again, I'm going specific skill set here. I'm going for a pass catching running back. That's where I'm looking. When Nyheim Hines was traded, I'll never forget Frank Reich saying, I feel like we got some guys by committee that could fill that role. I respect Frank, but I was kind of like, I'll believe that when I see it, and I felt like I was still kind of believing it or waiting to see it by the end of the year. So I like Zach Moss. I like Jonathan Taylor, but I think you need to help out your rookie quarterback, and by doing that, having a guy that can help you out. I know it's a lot to throw a rookie in there on third down, but that would be an avenue that I would try and look for in round 7. So let's go with pass-catching running back here to be your third RB.
And then the final pick the Colts have is 236, and you have them going back to the well on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, and I think this was the Grant Stewart trade. You gave them your 6th, you got their 7th, if I remember correctly, from last year. I'll go safety here, Eddie. I don't really have like strong conviction for any sort of position, to be totally honest with you. I think when you get to this point of the draft, I could be talked into a lot. Again, Roddy McLeod, as of right now, not here. Julian Blackmon entering a contract year. Nick Cross, Rodney Thomas, Blackmon. Those are 3 safeties. You could probably get by with that, but I will throw that in here. I will say, Eddie, after doing this exercise, I will never be mad with an edge rusher. I didn't put it on here. I think they have the numbers to not be in like a desperate need. Again, quantity-wise, you could argue quality. And it does sound like there are some decent edge rushers in this draft. So that would be a position that I would potentially, again, never rule out. I say safety to close it out. Again, edge rusher I can be talked into pretty much at any point. Eddie, maybe run it down one more time, and then any thoughts you have.
All right. Round 1, quarterback. Round 2, cornerback. Round 3, wide receiver. Round 4, offensive guard or center. Round 5, offensive tackle. Round 5 from Buffalo, cornerback. Round 5 from Dallas, linebacker. Round 7, running back. And round 7 from Tampa Bay, safety. I like all of this. I think I would have gone about the same, maybe move wide receiver to round 2 and corner to round 3, depending on who's available for me. I like Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma a good deal. Right. If he's there still near the top of the second round, I would probably lean that way. But after that, it just gets a little hairy with some of the wide receivers because they all have some questions. But I like the cornerback class like you talked about and like Gus Bradley's talked about, very deep. I can't remember who said this. It might have been, I think it was Charles Davis. He was on the Fan Midday Show probably a week or so ago, and he said that the cornerback classes now are going to start to become more deep because of guys that can't make it as wide receivers in college. They decide to go over to play corner, and the athleticism now in order to be a wide receiver is higher than it's ever been. So you're getting even more athletic corners that play cornerback like wide receivers who have the hands to play corner and also the skill set to go with the length.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Obviously 7-on-7 and just how much that continues to grow. You need guys on the other side of the ball to do that. And again, by all accounts, it's a really great cornerback draft class. So to talk more draft and to hear great insight from one of the experts and a guy that I absolutely love, let's go to Dane Brugler from The Athletic again. We recorded this with Dane late last week on our morning show, Kevin and Query. And here's Dane Brugler right now.
You know my question that I'm going to ask right off the top, because I've asked every draft expert this. And I know that I realize it's a redundant question, but to me it's one that I find fascinating. Dane Brugler joins us now on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Dane, appreciate your time. I'm going to get to you right now the question that I've asked several people that aren't necessarily the draft expert you are, but talking about rosters. So I'll ask you this. In your opinion, is this 2023 NFL draft a draft that has 4 quarterbacks that are up towards the front of it because there are 4 legitimate franchise quarterbacks, or does it have quarterbacks up towards the front of it because strictly there are 4 franchises up front that all need quarterbacks?
More the latter. It's a better quarterback group than we saw last year, where we had 1 quarterback go in the first 73 picks, historically bad quarterback class. And this year is better. There's no question. But, we could see – it's at least feasible. We could see 4 going to top 7. How many times that has happened in history of NFL draft? Never. It not happened once. So, and I think that speaks more towards teams needing a quarterback more so than 4 quarterbacks truly deserving of going that high. To me, Bryce Young is the best quarterback in this class from Alabama. I think he is the number 1 player in the draft overall. And, he's a complete outlier. The moment he's drafted, he'll be the smallest player in the NFL at his position. So, it's something that is going to take a little bit of faith, but he does the most quarterback things. And then the other 3 guys, you can poke holes in all 3 of them. And so it's just beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And so I think all 4 of these guys show enough that you can say, okay, these guys are future NFL starters. And then it gets into the debate about, okay, if he's an NFL starter, well, then what's the value of that? If I feel like a quarterback is going to be good enough in the NFL to start me games and help me win games, is that worth a top 15 pick compared to a guard or, a defensive tackle or whatever a value another position gives? So it's a loaded kind of question because you get into some of these value questions, but no, I think it's more of the latter where I don't think we have 4 truly quote unquote franchise type prospects at the position.
Dane, in my opinion, so we're going to say strictly, let's just say for the sake of the question here, that it comes down to it in the Colts, the 2 quarterbacks that are there are Richardson and Levis, and that they are debating between those 2. In your opinion, and see if this makes sense the way I ask this, which is a greater gap? The level of how ready they are to play right now between those 2 guys, theoretically Levis being more plug-and-play ready than Richardson at this point, or the level of what you see the gap being in terms of ceiling once they are fully embraced and comfortable within the NFL?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question because that's something that I think some teams are asking themselves that question. With Richardson, he's so unique because we've never really seen a talent like this. We've had 6'4", 245 quarterbacks before, but none that run a 4.43 in the 40-yard dash, or none that have his type of arm strength. But when you're talking about a player that has fewer than 400 career pass attempts, a player that has only 13 career starts, and he's below 500 in those 13 career starts. There's just a lot of football he has not yet experienced, and he didn't come from a big time high school. Okay, so there's still a lot of football that he has to learn. But at the same time, Anthony Richardson's a guy you want on the field because the biggest knock on him is just consistency with his accuracy, with his processing, learning defenses, understanding what defenses are trying to do. It's all about things that you're not necessarily going to get from a playbook. It's just sitting and watching and learning. You want this guy getting reps. So how long before we feel, okay, Anthony Richardson is going to get the playbook enough, we can trust him enough to put him out there and he can operate some form of the offense? that question is going to be, the answer to that question is going to be different from team to team based off of how willing they are to adjust the playbook to fit the quarterback, just all those different things. And so it's really a team by team type of case, because these quarterbacks are so different with what they're going to give you. Now, Will Levis, I think that he is definitely more pro-ready with what he can do from day one. But I think there's no question that overall Richardson, there's more home run potential there. More of, okay, if this guy hits, he can really be truly special. And at the end of the day, maybe that's what we should be betting on, is the best case of both these guys.
Dane Brugler, the author of The Beast, comes with your subscription to The Athletic. It's a must-have for anybody that wants just an ounce, or many ounces, I should say, information on the NFL draft. Over 400 prospects that Dane goes in depth on. Bryce Young at 1, C.J. Stroud the 4th overall prospect, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, right, back-to-back, 13 and 14. Dane, you've got Hendon Hooker not in the first round. He's your only quarterback you have with a second or a third round grade. You have him in the second round. Is it just so much system related, or is this more age and injury for the question on Hendon Hooker?
Well, I think anytime you talk about quarterbacks, you have to talk about timeline, right? We just talked about Richardson and, when is he going to be able to get on the field? And with Hooker, it's the same type of deal. You have to talk about timeline, coming off that injury. So, okay, he's not going to be ready for training camp, not going to be ready for the start of the season, whether that's PUP or, whatever designation that ends up being. Okay, so I guess your best case is hopefully he's going to be ready to be your backup over the second half of the season. Maybe he's able to get a start in, maybe late in the year. And then your hope is in year 2 that he enters the year, ready to compete for the starting job. But again, this is a guy coming from an offense where it's half field reads, high to low. It's a lot of things that, are not really conducive to what a lot of NFL teams do and what they ask of their quarterbacks. And so I think he's a smart guy. I think that he can, make that transition, but it's not as seamless as I think a lot of people believe it might be. So now there's a lot of things to like about Hendon Hooker, but I think when you factor in the injury, I think when you factor in the offense that he's coming from, that would worry me quite a bit, drafting a player like that in the first round. But you know what? I think for some teams, you look at Minnesota. Obviously they don't need a quarterback this year. Some other teams picking in the late 1, maybe some in that early 2 range. I think it can make more sense. But for a team that needs a quarterback to come in and make a difference for them in year 1, Hendon Hooker just doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, Dane Brugler with us from The Athletic, NFL draft analyst. Dane, we had your colleague Deontay Lee on with us a little bit earlier in the week, and I asked him this. I'll throw it at you. We're way down the road, and the Hall of Fame induction class in 20 years is inducting an offensive member from the 2023 draft class and a defensive member from the 2023 draft class. Who would be the Hall of Famers on offense out of this class and on defense out of this class if you had to bet on one?
I'll stick to my board, and that's, Bryce Young. And obviously where these guys end up matters so much. That's a big piece to the equation. But, Bryce Young, I think, even though he is a complete size outlier, he does some special things at the quarterback position that just make you go, okay, I'm a believer. He's the smallest quarterback that, we're going to see back there in the modern era. But as long as he stays healthy, he is his instincts, his ability to feel everything around him, the vision to understand what the defense is doing, but also where these windows are coming open, his accuracy, the processing, it's all special. And I don't say that lightly. I think that he absolutely has a chance to be that type of quarterback where we're talking about him in that light. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to go to Carolina, which I think they have a decent offensive line, decent offensive coaching staff around him. Not many weapons, so we'll see how they build up around him if that comes to fruition. But Bryce Young has that type of ability. On defense, Jalen Carter is the best defensive just talent in this draft, and if he's able to stay, keep things on the straight and narrow, and maturity is something that is never guaranteed, but it's something that over the years, he's able to really come into his own. Jalen Carter has the talent to be the best defensive player from this draft. There's no question. His block destruction is awesome. It's power, it's agility, it's the ability, and it's not just physical traits. It's skill. He has a very keen understanding of how to use his hands, his body control. So, those two guys have the most talent from this class. Now, hopefully they go to a situation where they're able to realize that and achieve it. So I think I would bet on those two guys just because, again, they're the most talented. But at the same time, I also think, you have to mention guys like Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, because he is, exactly what you're getting. He comes to you wrapped in clear wrapping paper. You know exactly what he is from day one, plug and play. He could be on that Zach Martin type of trajectory where plug him in at guard and he's going to make a lot of Pro Bowls. And, maybe we are talking about a Hall of Fame career down the road.
Dane Brugler is our guest. The Athletic is where you can read his work. The Payless Liquors hotline is where you are hearing him currently. Dane, I'm going to take quarterback out of the equation because that's probably the obvious answer here. So outside of quarterback, in your time doing this, in analyzing the draft, give me the position that is often the most unpredictable to determine translation from college game to pro.
Probably safety. Safeties, they're just asked to do so many different things in college. So you watch a guy on tape and, you decipher, okay, they're in this type of shell, they're this coverage, and this is, his responsibility is ABC. And you just have to understand what they're being asked to do. But a lot of times safeties they play very conservative in college defenses. And then you try to translate that. Okay, can he play man? Can he drop it in nickel? Can he do these things? A lot of it's projection towards the NFL. And so I think safety can be a little bit difficult at times to just fully understand what a safety is capable of, because you have to have equal parts toughness, football IQ, athleticism. You want to be able to put a guy to have range, play both sidelines. But you have to be a little bit of all of that. You need the ball skills. So I think a lot of times, safeties don't get a chance to prove themselves that they have all of those things. And honestly, it's hard to find really good safeties. There's a reason we don't see many safeties drafted in the first round. This year, I think Brian Branch from Alabama, who's really more of a true nickel, but I think he deserves to go in the first round. He has first-round talent. But after that, when's the next time we see a safety drafted? It might not be in the next 75 picks. So I think safeties are, really good safeties are hard to find in the draft. That comes true every year, especially this year.
Dane, obviously Purdue had a pretty nice season. Aiden O'Connell, Payne Durham, Charlie Jones, Corey Trice. I think all those guys will hear their name called. Of those four, would it be Corey Trice that hears his name called first?
Good chance, yeah. I think the big question with him just was the injury, and he started off a little bit slow this year, and then gradually got better and better, and the way he worked out, and this is a guy that for 6'3.5", 206 pounds, to go out and run like he did, he's in the 4.4s. But not just that, but the short area agility stuff, the 3-cone, 6.70. It's an unbelievable time for a guy that size. 4.06 in the short shuttle, awesome time. The jumps were amazing, 11 foot in the broad. So he has the special athleticism that you really like. And for a guy that size, who's that long, that type of wingspan, you're going to bet on those types of traits. It's a stopwatch position. It's a tape measure position. And so I do think that Trice has a good chance to be the first Purdue player drafted. But there's a lot of love for O'Connell as well. Teams are always looking for, even if you think Aiden O'Connell is a backup and nothing more, if you're going to list the most important positions on an NFL roster, QB2 will come before a strong safety for most teams. It'll come before your right guard. So a lot of teams are looking for a competent backup that's going to bring value to your quarterback room and just overall trust with that player. So if your starter goes down, you feel okay. We're still in this. Because our backup, we feel good about our backup coming in. So O'Connell has some value, and so third round, fourth round, I think there's a lot of teams with their eyes on Aiden O'Connell as a possibility.
30 seconds left, Dane. So one-word answer here for you: the Colts stay at 4 hypothetically between Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, the quarterback that is most likely to have his name still available when the Colts are on the clock.
I think it's Richardson. I do. I think, and I think that it's the Colts. I think that right now, if I had to guess, that's who the Colts would take. Knowing Chris and what he likes at the position. What fits that offense. I think Richardson makes a lot of sense in some ways, and not some in others. But I think that maybe that could be the marriage that ends up happening at 4.
The most obscure college in the Beast was which college?
New Mexico Highlands, maybe. There's quite a few where I was like, I wonder what their mascot is. I can just try to a few that I've never heard of, but that's the fun of it every year, is discovering some of these lower level D3. Because I'm a D3 guy, so figuring out some of these D3 schools, D2 schools is fun.
The man ranked the top 10 long snappers here in the 2023 draft. He's the one and only Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Dane, great work, man, and as always, thank you.
No, thank you. Take care, guys.
All right, that was Dane Brugler from The Athletic. I hope you guys have enjoyed us kind of throwing in the random draft segments that we've done on our morning show. And I know not everybody can listen to that on a live or even a podcast base, so decided to toss those in there.
The Beast
for Dane. Yes.
Do you have a copy yet?
I do have a copy. I'm in awe, honestly, scrolling through it.
Wait, were you being legit there at the end where you talked about how he ranked the top 10 long snappers?
He has the top 10 long snappers.
No way.
Yes, 1,000%. Oh, yeah, I saw it. Every time I open up the Beast, I think my computer's going to blow up.
How big is it?
408, I want to say.
Insert pun or joke, whatever.
Oh, boy, jeez. Yeah, I'm getting too old for that. Thank you to Dane Brugler for that. I think we're going to do, before you get to Twitter questions, I think let's do a Monday morning pod next week, Eddie. And then we'll see how round 1 goes, the media availability for the number 1 overall, or not the number 1 overall pick, but the number 1 pick, the round 1 guy, what time that will be on Friday.
My toes are tapping right now, KB. As the pod listeners know, and I'm an active bettor.
Yeah.
Last week, I put $5 down on C.J. Stroud to go to the Colts at number 4. It was plus 2,200.
Woo! Oh, man.
I don't think you can find those odds anywhere now.
Yeah, you could not. The Vegas odds on these picks, which I think a few of our Twitter questions allude to them, pretty wild to see how they've shifted.
Plus 250 now.
Yeah. It almost seems like, there's probably 3 or 4 guys that are plus 400 or less?
At 4?
Yeah. It seems pretty like coin tossing.
There's 4. Yeah. There's 4 guys at plus 400 or less.
You typically do not see that. Okay, with that, Eddie, we know where your allegiance lies now.
If you didn't before, then now you certainly do.
Let's get into Twitter questions.
All right. Love Twitter question time. Twitter question number 1, Z Palm. Hey, fellas, do you guys feel like Jim Irsay or Chris Ballard might have some scar tissue with Will Levis because his play style is so similar to Carson Wentz play? Anthony Richardson would give them a flavor at quarterback they've never had. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think it's fair to bring up. Again, how much say does Irsay have? Has he let Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen handle this? I do think something to note just kind of right out of the gate on the Levis-Richardson front, Eddie. When I have heard the Levis chatter, it was pre-Shane Steichen arrival. And I think that's really important to say out loud. Maybe this is me wishful thinking, but again, I think Shane Steichen should have a ton of input into this pick. A ton. I would argue he should have more input than Chris Ballard. I'm not saying that's how it's going to happen, but that's how it should happen, if I'm being totally honest with you. So I think that me speaking from myself, when I have heard the Levis interest, again, this was pre-Steichen. I could see reasons why Steichen, a guy that thinks you can develop a little bit more of accuracy, a guy that obviously came from a running quarterback last year, I could see why Anthony Richardson could be super intriguing to him. So, I don't know if I'm ready to say, like, I think Richardson is the favorite, but I feel less confident about Levis just because that chatter was so early. And I could see why Richardson would be intriguing to the Colts. I do think, which kind of counters what I just said, I thought Zach Kiefer did a really nice job this week on The Athletic and looking back on all of the past comments that Chris Ballard has made regarding quarterback, because I don't believe anything he says in the year 2023. I mean, that's just...
You shouldn't.
I think you say that for any GM that has a position that the Colts have. And the quote was from 2020 about accuracy around the combine and saying, like, Ballard doesn't think you can get drastically better. I forget the exact word when it comes to accuracy. You can get incrementally better, but not dramatically better. And he has always said this phrase of, like, at some point you've got to throw from the pocket.
I remember him saying that this year.
Like, at some point you do have to deliver from the pocket, and that kind of, maybe poo-poos a little bit of the running quarterback. And I guess while I'm on this kind of train of thought, I've never been get me a running back at quarterback. Certainly not that. I've never said, like, you need Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick at QB. I just think you need a guy that can improvise a bit with his legs. A bit. Keep a play alive.
Justin Herbert.
Exactly. Get out of the pocket a little bit. Just kind of subtle movements. Don't need to be an outright scrambler or some dual threat RPO god out there. But on 3rd and 7, if the field opens up and you need to beat a linebacker and have an angle, can you do it?
Joe Burrow is a perfect example of that.
And again, I think all these quarterbacks in this draft have that. Some of them, in Richardson's case, obviously have it to a bigger degree. But, I hope that answers it to Z Palm.
Are you a fan of any of the quarterbacks that are in that second tier that are outside of the top 5?
I love the Fresno kid, Hainer.
Yes.
Love him. But, again, to the point where I would draft him, though. But Clayton Tune, I enjoyed watching him when I did. I don't know if the BYU kid Hall, that I'm just like, he played bad against Notre Dame, so I write him off. But, not that. And I think Aiden O'Connell will have a nice presence in the NFL.
I like that too. Alex says, good morning. Loving the off-season pods. I am all for this new Colts mentality on a scale of 1 to 10. How much of a rebuild are the Colts in? 10 being tank for number 1 overall. Why haven't we traded players such as DeForest Buckner and other players that aren't a part of the long-term vision to stash draft picks? If it were me, I would stay at 4 regardless. Take Anthony Richardson if available, and if not, get Will Anderson and then use draft capital to go all in on the 2024 draft.
Eddie, how mad do you think Colts fans would be if they traded back from 4?
I think there would be picket signs and rioting outside of West 56th Street.
Would that be a tad calmer if the trade back included a 2024 first-round pick in return?
I would say it would calm it just a little. You're not on hot. Maybe you're warm.
Okay, all right.
But I think that cranks back up to full-on, like, flame-throwing if they don't go out and try to lose.
Well, yeah.
And if they go out and try to win, because then you're going to have to give up more than 2 first-round picks if you want Caleb Williams or Drake May.
To Alex's question, I get where he's coming from. I think DeForest Buckner can be effective for 3 or 4 more years. And you would like to hope that the rebuild would reach something of promising note in 3 to 4 years, or else you have hit another roadblock. So I'm fine with keeping Buckner. I just think Gardner Minshew is too competent. The Colts have too many solid to above average football players to really go 2-15 or 1-16, like whatever it's actually going to look like. On this front, Eddie, I think it's worth mentioning right now, some of the rumors that we are hearing. And that would be, you guys had on Aaron Wilson right today on the midday show, and he was pretty adamant Houston is not going to take a quarterback.
Oh yeah, he was like, and he made it a point. He was like, he goes, I just don't see them doing it. They loved Bryce Young, and they don't feel like they have. They have the cliche of Ballard. He says you don't just take a quarterback to take one, and they want one that fits their system. And according to him, the only one that fit the system that they want to run was Bryce Young.
Okay, a couple things on that. First, if I'm Houston, don't you look into Trey Lance? And maybe their offensive staff coming from San Francisco aren't Trey Lance fans. Maybe they saw him work for 2 years and they just said, all right, we're good. In San Francisco, if Brock Purdy's coming off Tommy John, I don't think I'd be just wanting to give up on Trey Lance just yet either. Like, I don't think Purdy is some slam dunk, especially with Garoppolo no longer there. I guess they do have Darnold, but yeah.
In that system, you can make any quarterback work.
Well, that is a good point.
If you have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey.
So if Houston does not take a quarterback, they take Will Anderson at 2, right?
Yep.
So then at 3, what does Arizona do? You would think with CJ Stroud on the board, they would have some trade calls. I think if you're the Colts, what you need to hope for right now is this. The earlier thought process was you were going to have a quarterback go 1, you were going to have a quarterback go 2, you were going to have a quarterback go 3, and Arizona would not want to trade too far down because they'd want to get Will Anderson.
Yep.
So that was the advantage of the Colts of like, hey, they're only going to want to trade from 3 to 4 because they still want to get Anderson. Therefore, the Colts would be the trade partner they would want. So then the Colts could move up to 3 and theoretically take their pick of Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. Well, let's throw out that scenario for the time being. Now, if you have Bryce Young 1, Will Anderson 2, that puts Arizona at 3 with the 3 quarterbacks still on the board. If Arizona's going to trade back, the question now becomes, how far do they want to move back? Mm-hmm. And do they view Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech as the guy that they really, 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 really want?
Or Jalen Carter. Like, you still have to throw that name out there because,
yeah.
I mean, most of these defensive tackles that are, at the top of the league now, they come with some baggage. And a lot of it is something like that. It's like, that's just how they come nowadays.
Yeah, it is a fair point. Yeah, it is a fair point. Now, how they view the defensive board, I think, would be really interesting. Do they view the trade back and say, we have a new GM, we need to get the greatest package possible? Or do they sit there and say,
we have a new head coach?
Well, and a new defensive head coach as well. Or do they look at it and say, we just need to move back 1 or 2 spots because, to your point, Eddie, they want Jalen Carter or they want Tyree Wilson. That will be interesting. And that, I think, is the best thing for the Colts of like, yes, the Raiders at 7 are enticing. Yes, the Titans at 11 are enticing. But I think what you need to hope for right now is that Arizona and or Houston, but now it looks like Arizona, that they have a defensive guy that they really covet. And that they might feel like 3 is too rich, or if they can get, an additional 3rd rounder or 2, they would happily trade back 1 spot knowing they can still get that guy. So that'll be something, I think, to monitor a week from tomorrow.
Mitch's question is up next. Is Chris Ballard the king of the half measure?
That's probably a good way to put it. I like a lot of Chris Ballard's core beliefs. There's a lot of his thought process I find interesting. I appreciate his explanation around a lot of it as well. I know a lot of my colleagues are like, nothing's going to happen on Friday at that press conference. I mean, you can ask a lot of free agency related questions to him. Like, it's not like you only have to ask draft related questions to him. We haven't talked to him since Stephon Gilmore was traded and Paris Campbell was signed elsewhere. And they have been, I would think, a little bit quiet on the free agency front. So you can ask those questions. So, but, with Ballard, Eddie, I always go back to just that opening press conference and sitting in that Colts pavilion when he said it's not about one guy. It almost seems like he spent 7 years trying to prove that. He spent 7 years trying to prove that it's not about one guy. Mm-hmm. Which, again, to me has been head-scratching because he left an organization where they decided we need something different there. We have a fine, competent, Alex Smith was probably a borderline Pro Bowler at one point in Kansas City. And they said, all right, with Andy Reid, we can't make it work. And by make it work, I mean get to the top.
Yeah.
And so they obviously did something very drastic to get Patrick Mahomes, and it worked. It's just fascinating that Ballard has largely taken a stance of that isn't necessary, and that he's delayed these drafts. And I guess let's get back to the Jalen Hurts conversation that I was thinking about earlier. You know, when you look back on that 2020 draft, Eddie, we're going to look back on that draft in 5 to 10 years. I mean, hell, we can look at it now. You want to talk about a great quarterback draft? Great quarterback draft.
Mm-hmm.
Burrow goes 1. You know, Tua goes 5. Obviously, Tua's health. You know, Herbert goes 6. You know, Jordan Love, we'll see, goes 26. And then Hurts goes 53, I believe it was for Hurts.
Yeah.
And then Eason at, 100 and whatever, 20 something.
Yeah.
And the Colts draft him. So that to me, and I know you guys have heard this before, so I apologize, but every time this gets brought up, I think it's worth mentioning. As soon as Andrew Luck retires in August of 2019, the college football season hasn't started yet. You tell your scouts, guys, I don't know what Jacoby Brissett's going to look like with our team this year, but I'm skeptical he's our franchise guy. So we need to exhaust every resource possible in evaluating this 2020 draft class, and if we're in a position to take one, we need to do it. And when the year ended and they went 7-9, sitting there with the 13th overall pick, you're in a position. You know, Tua went 5, Herbert went 6. You know, a trade up to 3, a trade up to 4. We saw Buffalo, do something kind of similar just a couple years prior and going from 21 to 12 and then 12 to 7 to get Josh Allen. You know, the Hurts debate, I've heard both sides of it. From a Reich wanted him, Ballard wanted him. Pretty conflicting on that end. But that was the time to do it. And they obviously chose not to with Phillip Rivers, and the rest is history. And you could kind of make excuses for yourself as a franchise in future drafts on why you didn't do it. But yes, half measure is probably fair. Again, the baseball analogy that I've said a million times, you got to swing the bat. You got to swing the bat and not just try to get opposite field or whatever. You got to swing and swing for the fences.
Brian says his thoughts are from afar. This Colts regime doesn't seem like it's working in unison. Chris Ballard wants someone and Shane Steichen wants someone else. If it was a consensus pick, they would make a move. The lack of communication between them is concerning. If looks were important, it looks like Ballard... What? Oh, held Reich back. Forgot the space bar between held and Reich. Held Reich back. The Panthers made a move for one. Seems like the Colts are settling. If you don't make a decision, can you be evaluated on that decision?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, do we? I don't think we know if Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard have some big disagreement on where they're at quarterback. I know there's some people out there that think Ballard would be more Richardson centric and Steichen would be more Levis, vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, if it's Stroud, Richardson, and Levis, don't you take Stroud?
Oh, yeah. 1,000 times out of 1,000.
Yeah, that one to me, I don't understand it. As far as the Carolina thing is, part of that is hiring a coach so late, is that you aren't able to get to a consensus early. Eddie, just 2 weeks ago, the Colts were touring the country. I mean, the month that the NFL draft is happening, the Colts were touring the country working these guys out. They just got a late start. So, good, bad, indifferent, however you want to look at it, they did get a late start. I think something that we need to remind ourselves, and I know we're in such a bubble of this year's draft, which is totally understandable. What the Colts must do in supporting this quarterback is do the exact opposite of what Ryan Grigson did after the 2012 draft. The 2012 draft by Grigson, great work.
Yeah.
Great work. But if you look in after drafts of that, you whiffed historically bad. Historically bad. These guys didn't pan out in Indy. They didn't pan out in Seattle. Hell, they didn't pan out in the CFL. Whether it's Bjorn Werner or Hugh Thornton or Dante Moncrief or DeJon Smith or TJ Green, you just cannot have the abundance of misses that you had in drafts. And then on top of that, obviously you had misses in free agency. So it got to a point where basically Jim Irsay said, I know it's about to dip, so I'm just going to can it because the foundation is about to fall apart because it's built on sand. And at that point it was built on, Luck and Hilton. That was really your only core guys.
Yeah.
Moving into 2017 season there. So I think that is something, again, you've got to make sure that you start hitting on drafts in a pretty routine basis, which is difficult, but welcome to life and trying to build a frequent contender.
I was going to say Jarrell Freeman, but he was already gone.
Yeah. The first Grigson signing, great signing.
I agree. Flippin's Twitter question is up next. Any rumors on Will Levis having maturity issues? Sounds bad, but he just kind of looks and acts like he has some growing up to do. Man, I sound old.
Don't you love just people just judging book by its cover and all that?
Oh, yeah.
Eddie, you were over the combine when those guys spoke to the media.
Yeah.
I think it was Young, Stroud, and Richardson were all pretty quickly, like within a 20-minute span. Levis, I think it was a couple hours later. You could have literally walked away from Bryce Young. I think is like he's in the Jonathan Taylor nice category.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's in a different category. But with Stroud, Richardson, and Levis, you could have listened to all three of those podium sessions and walked away. And if you wanted to, you could have been like, that dude has the swagger that a quarterback position needs. He's got the it factor.
Yep.
People are going to, he's a guy that's going to walk into your room and say, if you don't draft me, I'm going to beat your ass for the next 10 years like Peyton did. You could have gone there, or you could have walked away and been like, what a smug ass. What a cocky, pompous guy. Like, you could have gone either way.
Yeah.
It's just, what do you want to hear? Like, everyone's like, man, Will Levis saying that he has a cannon? What a cocky dude.
No, it's truth.
It's truth and it's confidence, and it's the same sort of swagger that, C.J. Stroud exudes at a podium, or Anthony Richardson had at the podium. Again, for the most part, I don't feel like there are these major red-ish flags with any of them from a personality standpoint.
Obviously, we don't get to talk to them as much, but yeah.
And this is private investigator stuff that, Eddie, it's a great point, and it's probably why I said what I said last week. And I know this doesn't make for great podcast radio or whatever, but I don't have this strong conviction like I had with Benedict Mathurin and the Pacers. But where I do have strong conviction is Shane Steichen. And I think if you're a Colts fan right now, you should be thrilled that Shane Steichen is the head coach, the play caller, and it's going to be the one working extremely close with this quarterback. Now, again, I want Shane Steichen to be the one calling the shots a week from Thursday. We'll see if that happens when the pick is made. But that is where I think you should have optimism. The prospects, we'll see. There's a lot of X factors that go with it. You never know how guys are going to react to money, fame, adversity, all those things. Jalen Hurts is a perfect example. When we did the pros and cons on last week's pod, Eddie, we or at least I slotted in a pro as Hendon Hooker transferring and exceeding. Will Levis transferring and exceeding. Jalen Hurts, he transferred. That dude got benched at Alabama. That's humbling. That is adversity. And does it help that he's a coach's son? Probably.
On the national stage.
On the biggest stage. And
after the game, you wouldn't have thought he was the one that got benched either. He was just so supportive of Tua.
But then still had the drive.
Yeah.
Like was a great teammate, but then still at some point probably had a quiet moment like, F that.
Yeah.
I need to do something about it. So that's what you're looking for. That's what you're trying to find. And at this point, if you're these people, just lie at this point. If you're a GM, just keep on lying. What do we got? We got a couple more?
Yeah, we got two left. Blopa or Blapa?
Blopa. Legend. A loyal listener, Blopa.
Blopa. Hi, guys. I tell you that I am working on a Colts pod in Spanish for the Latino audience. You are a great inspiration. I appreciate that.
But thank you.
Kevin, have you ever been, has anyone ever said you're their inspiration before?
Well, certainly not in Espanol. I took 4 years at Cathedral High School. I struggled mightily. I was able to test out of, I think it was 8 credits at IU, which I was shocked by that I was able to do that. So I did not have to pursue foreign language after that. But Blopa, that is great to hear. In all seriousness, he has been with us, Eddie, since the start. So I love that.
The dad jokes, by the way, just keep getting worse and worse.
What was it?
In Espanol.
Just want to make sure that I still have a little bit of the fastball.
It's more of a curveball now. My question is Gardner Minshew the most important firm in free agents? Depending on who Indy takes in the draft, he could be starting quarterback for the start of the season, but more importantly, the mentor and who will help assimilate Shane Steichen's offense to the new quarterback and the rest of the units.
I mean, Gardner's going to be big. But I will go back to something I said earlier, Eddie. I just think Gardner Minshew is too competent to truly fail or tank. I don't think the Colts are going to tank very well. For those that want the Colts to tank well, I don't see it. And this is a debate to get into in May, but like, how do you then view when you play the rookie? When do you not play the rookie? How much do you play Minshew? All of those things. But I like Minshew. I think he's going to be that, most important free agent. I mean, there's not many to choose from. Ebukam would probably be the other one that you would throw into that group there. But, again, I think Minshew checks a lot of what you want in a backup bridge QB.
Final question goes to Garrett. Hey, Kevin. Hope you and Eddie are both enjoying life right now.
We are, Garrett. We're enjoying it, man.
Well, one of us is. I don't know if I told you about the car bill, did I?
Oh, boy. No.
No?
No. I was hoping it wasn't house related with the move, but
no. Well, it was a car. I'll explain later.
Okay.
With the news of 49ers general manager John Lynch saying that Brock Purdy has earned the right to be the quarterback of San Francisco next year, why have there been no discussions from other teams to trade for Trey Lance? They gave up a ton to get him, and he's never gotten a great shot to prove himself on the field. Do you think there is a scenario where Ballard could be talking with Steichen and Irsay to see if they could go after Lance and solve their quarterback carousel that way? Thanks as always, Kev. Always look forward to the content each week.
Garrett, thank you for that. I know we've talked a little bit intermittently about Trey Lance. Who is he, Eddie? Was it one game North Dakota State played that COVID year? Didn't they do like one game for them?
One or two, I can't remember. Maybe one.
So a one-year starter. He started 4 games in the NFL. The numbers won't wow you whatsoever. In a way, he probably has some Anthony Richardson-type traits. Probably not to that level, but stuff you like. The dude didn't throw an interception his entire 1 year and starting at North Dakota State. That thing still to this day just is wild to me. I probably wouldn't do it, but I would look deeply into it. Part of the reason why I wouldn't do it or I'd have hesitancy, Eddie, is what? This will be year 3 for Trey Lance?
Yes.
So you need to pick up his 5th-year rookie option next offseason?
Yep.
So, like, you're making a big financial commitment to him very shortly. Like, does Trey Lance need a year to be Trey Lance going from North Dakota State to the NFL? He might look awful in his first year whenever he does start. But then he might all of a sudden ascend and have growth and make the jump from year 1 to year 2. The issue is you would then be paying him whatever it is, 17-some million, 20-some million for that 5th-year rookie option, and then he hits free agency, and who knows how you would handle it. So it's intriguing to me, but I don't think I could fully go there.
I'm in the same boat as you.
Do you just let Houston do it or not? I mean, again, Houston's offensive staff, aren't they all San Francisco guys?
I think so.
So
if not most.
Yeah. So that would be interesting. Obviously, DeMeco Ryan and all of that. So anything else, Eddie?
I think we've hit it all.
All right.
We talked about the Texans, talked about Jalen Hurts.
Oh, we talked baseball. We talked Hunter Green.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Reds, though. That's a
miracle that the Reds are able to.
Oh, it's the first time they've lost back-to-back games where they were shut out while giving up 8+ runs since 1949.
God, now I'm seeing Tiger just had surgery today. Just a kick in the you-know-what. Tiger Woods underwent a subtalar fusion procedure to address his post-traumatic arthritis from his previous talus fracture.
That's a lot of big words for you.
I mean, just tell me what part of the body it is. Tiger is currently recovering and looks forward to beginning his rehabilitation. So basically, Tiger Woods is not going to play golf for quite some time. God, it's a kick in the you-know-what to end the pod.
Why would you do that? Why would you end it that way?
I mean, you can't ignore the elephant in the room. Eddie Garrison, have a great week, man. Let's do Monday, okay?
Sounds good to me.
All right, everybody. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. Plenty of content, 1075thefan.com.